Godzilla x Kong, Guardians of Equestria, written by Phantom Plus 1234. Chapter 12. Titan Battle Royale Part 2. Seeing all the chaos unfold outside their homes, the Crystal Ponies screamed in terror as they scrambled to evade the Empire's Godzilla and his allies continued to clash with the other Titans. Thankfully, Cadence, Shining Armor, and Flurry Hard were able to escape with the combined efforts of the Monarch Task Force and Twilight and her friends. "My subjects, please calm yourselves," Cadence ordered. "How can we stay calm when our city is currently being destroyed?" a pony argued. Cadence looked up as Kong punches Trigger, knocking it into some nearby buildings. Cadence desperately tries to find a way to ease the ponies' concerns, but it was clear they were too on edge by the scene unfolding before them. "If we can somehow direct the battle away from the city, we might still be able to save the Empire," suggested Starlight. "How?" asked Rainbow Dash. "It's not like those things will just move somewhere else if we ask nicely, will we?" Twilight? Applejack asked. Twilight tries to come up with a solution as the battle continues to rage on. I don't know," said Twilight. The ponies cower in fear as Godzilla roars before tackling Shadow Ghidorah to the ground. "My subjects, I understand you're worried, but we must worry about our lives first," said Cadence. "Let us settle here until the battle subsides." The ponies talked amongst themselves, clearly unsure about Cadence's suggestion, but eventually agree that their lives are more important. "Fine, we'll put our faith in you, Princess," said a pony. Cadence gave them a light smile before looking towards the Crystal Empire. The others followed her gaze and watched as the battle raged on. Angus curls up into a ball and rolls towards Globara, ramming into its chest and sending it flying towards Shadow Ghidorah. But Shadow Ghidorah quickly turns into a dark smoke and splits in half before merging back together. Angus quickly retreats back into his shell as Shadow Ghidorah fires a blast of dark energy towards him, but Godzilla takes this opportunity and slams his tail into the monster, knocking it down. Meanwhile, Kong is clashing with Trigon as it attempts to slash at him with its hooked claws. "This is getting quite intense," said Tempest. "But we're going to have to rely on Godzilla and his allies if we want any hopes of defeating those monsters," said Delene. "Yeah, go Godzilla." Pinky cheers. I find it hard to believe that Pinky's seeing this as some sort of entertainment site rarity. Pinky continued to cheer as the Titans clashed. Kong growled as he tried to swing at Chrysochloris, but to no avail. Seeing this, Centaurus walked up next to Kong and raised his tail before gesturing towards the flying menace. Kong smirked as he grabbed Angus's tail and began swinging before hurling the oversized turtle at Chrysochloris, knocking her out of the air and sending her crashing into the ground. Seeing this, Trigon retaliates by firing its grappling hooks from under its hooked claws and wrapping them around Kong before pulling him in towards its buzzsaw embedded in its chest. Thankfully, Radon quickly intervenes by burning the wires with his radioactive flames. Shadow Ghidorah rushes to its partner's aid by transforming into a cloud of smoke and surrounding Radon, blinding him. Godzilla attempts to save his comrade by firing his atomic heat ray at Shadow Ghidorah, only to accidentally hit Radon instead and sends him crashing to the ground. Chrysochloris follows in and incapacitates Radon by jabs him in his left wing with her stinger. "Uh-oh," says Capper. "This is bad." "Radon's down," said Delene. Angus tries to save his friend but is quickly intercepted by Globar, who blocks his path. As Radon rolls around on the ground trying to escape, Chrysochloris shapeshifts into a skullcrawler before biting down on his right wing. Realizing his ally is in trouble, Kong grabs one of the buildings next to his feet and smashes it above Chrysochloris' head, temporarily stunning it and giving Kong the opportunity to grab the shapeshifting monster and throws it at Globar, knocking the two onto the ground. "Now that's what I call teamwork," said Rainbow Dash. "Yay, Flutter," she murmurs as she quietly claps her hooves. As Globara and Chrysochloris slowly get to their feet, Kong raises his fist and attempts to punch the two monsters, but is stopped by something. He looks up to see the Storm King's whip wrapped around his arm. As he tries to remove his restraints, the Storm King yanks hard and drags Kong down, saving its two minions. Angus sees his opening and crawls over to Radon to check on his condition, but is quickly swallowed up by Shadow Ghidorah's smoke. Godzilla hears his ally yelp and attempts to fire another blast of his atomic heat ray, but ends up striking Angus instead. "Oh come on, that's the second time he did that." Bernie groans. Godzilla's eyes burn with rage as Shadow Ghidorah re-emerges in front of him. As Shadow Ghidorah shoots him a taunting look, Godzilla roars before charging at the three-headed monster. Just as he was about to reach Shadow Ghidorah, Trigon suddenly comes up from the side and slashes at Godzilla with its hooked claws. Seeing its opening, Shadow Ghidorah quickly swallows both Godzilla and Trigon in a cloud of smoke. As Godzilla tries to locate his target, Trigon uses Shadow Ghidorah's smoke to its advantage and begins slashing at him from within the smoke. Meanwhile, as Kong attempts to get to his feet, Chrysochorus latches itself onto his back while Globara pummels him with its punches and kicks. Angus manages to recover from the attack and rushes over to Kong to help him, but the Storm King uses the crystal of the end of its whip to summon a bolt of lightning down onto Angus, stunning him. "Oh, this doesn't look good," said Applejack. They watch as the Storm King grabs Angus with its whip before hurling him towards the smoke. As Shadow Ghidorah disperses, Godzilla is struck by Angus, sending him toppling onto the ground. As they try to stand up, Trigon jumps on top of Godzilla and begins slashing at him. Next to him, Angus is struggling to stand up when Shadow Ghidorah grabs his tail with its teeth before lifting him up and slamming him down onto the ground. All the while, Kong is still struggling with Chrysochorus and Globara. Is it just me or are they losing this one?" asked Trixie. The group looks on with concern as Kong finally throws Chrysochorus off his back, only for it to shapeshift into Scare King and begin striking him in the back with its whip. Godzilla was also on the verge of defeat as Trigon continued to slash at him. It finally stopped its onslaught as Godzilla lay on the ground severely wounded, but Trigon wasn't done as it charged up its magic and blasted Godzilla in the face. Now with Godzilla, Kong, Regon, and Angus all defeated, Storm King let out a triumphant roar as its minions joined its side. "Oh no," Fluttershy whimpered. "This isn't good," said Celine. "How is it those things are so powerful?" Cadence asked. "They used cheat moves," said Rainbow Dash. Storm King looked at Shadow Ghidorah and gestured it towards Godzilla. The three-headed monster turned towards the defeated king and began charging up an attack as everyone watched in anticipation. "We need to do something before they kill Godzilla," said Celine. "Okay, but what can we do?" asked Bernie. "There has to be something, right?" asked Starlight. Realizing that nothing could be done, they all prepared to watch the end of the king, but just when Shadow Ghidorah was about to let loose its attack, a blast of icy cold air suddenly struck the monster in the chest as its body became encased in a blanket of ice. "What was that?" asked Luna. Another roar filled the area as everyone turned around to see a giant white quadruped creature with large blue crystalline spines protruding from its back. Riding it was an ape similar to Kong, but much smaller and covered with orange fur, unlike its older counterpart. "Are those?" asked Cadence. "No way," said Trapper. "What are they doing here?" asked Bernie. "Miss Ellen, are they titans?" asked Fluttershy. "Not just any titans, that's the ancient titan Shimel and Kong's loyal kin, Scudo," Ellen explained. Storm King roared as its minions turned towards the newcomers. Shimel responded with a roar of her own before charging towards them with Scudo on her back. Storm King pointed the crystal at them as Globara, Chrysochorus, and Trigon prepared to engage. Globara reached down and grabbed a building before hurling it towards the two, but Shimel quickly froze it with her ice breath, allowing Scudo to jump up and catch the frozen mass before hurling it at the frozen Shadow Ghidorah and shattering it upon impact. As the chunks of ice landed around them, they began to glow in the golden light before disintegrating. "Yes!" Bernie exclaimed, pumping his fists. "That's one down," added Applejack. Seeing their ally go down like that was enough to provoke the remaining four. This distraction was enough time for Kong to grab Angus by the tail and throw him at Globara, sending it flying forwards where it landed face first into the ground. Realizing what happened, Chrysochorus, Trigon, and Storm King turned around as Kong held up his axe and roared with Angus standing next to him. Globara slowly got up and stomped its feet in frustration as Trigon began charging up an attack, having completely forgotten about Shimel and Scudo. As Globara slowly approached Kong, Scudo jumped off Shimel and climbed on top of Globara's head and began biting and scratching at his face as it tried to shake him off. "Sheesh, that's terrifying," said Spike. "I think it's cute," said Fluttershy. Chrysochorus looked around confused, trying to figure out who to help, but before it could make a choice, Shimel lunged at it and pulled it out of the air and onto the ground by its tail. As Chrysochorus tried to escape, Shimel swung it by the tail before throwing it at Globara. Seeing the monster come flying towards it, Scudo jumped off as the two monsters crashed into each other. Meanwhile, as Trigon finished charging up, Scudo landed on top of it and forcefully broke off one of its horns as Trigon tried shaking him off. Kong quickly used this distraction and broke off one of Trigon's hooked claws. Just as he was about to do the same for his other claw, Trigon quickly threw Scudo off of its head and into Kong. As the two apes got to their feet, Trigon raised its second claw and was about to attack when a blast of atomic breath erupted, leaving a gaping hole in its chest. As Trigon collapsed, Kong and Scudo could see Godzilla on his feet standing behind the monster. "Head two down!" Rainbow exclaimed as Trigon disintegrated. Now Storm King was furious. It had just lost two of its loyal minions and they still hadn't managed to kill Godzilla or his allies. It turned to give orders to Chrysochloris and Globar, only to see Redon lifting up a frozen Chrysochloris in the air and dropping it on top of a frozen Globar, shattering the two titans into pieces. Now with all its minions gone, Storm King was forced to face Godzilla, Kong, Anguirus, Redon, Shimo, and Squid all on its own. As Godzilla and his allies surrounded Storm King, it raised its whip and attempted to subdue the King of Monsters, only to have it ripped out of its hands and ripped in half by Godzilla. "Nowhere to run, buddy," Trapper chuckled. As Storm King waited for their next move, Squid caught him off guard by jumping at his face and scratching viciously at it. It ripped Squid off its face and attempted to throw him onto the ground, but not before Kong came in and punched the Titan into the ground face first. Kong quickly grabbed Storm King before it could recover and threw him towards Godzilla as he slammed his tail, sending him back towards Kong, who punched him back into the ground. Ouch, Cadence winced as she watched them beat Storm King into a pulp. Before it could get back up, Redon grabbed it by the leg and lifted it into the air, where Shimo froze it with her ice breath. Kong used this opportunity to grab Anguirus by the tail and swing him around before throwing him at the frozen Storm King just as Redon let it go. Anguirus' shell collided with the frozen Titan, smashing it into chunks of ice as the crowd ponies cheered. Godzilla and his allies let out a victory roar as the Storm King disintegrated just like its fellow minions. "Why yeah, that was awesome," said Rainbow Dash. "Talk about teamwork," Tempest chuckled. "I think this calls for a victory party." Cheered Pinky. "I hate to break it to you, Pinky, but I think we should focus on rebuilding the Crystal Empire first," said Starlight. "I agree," said Cadence. "Ewafui," Pinky pouted. "Plus we still have Tobias to worry about. As long as he and Hypermechagador are on the loose, Peace won't be returning to this world anytime soon," added Eileen. "I guess you're right," said Pinky. "I suppose you'll be heading off again?" asked Shining Armor. "Sorry brother, we want to help you and Cadence, but as Miss Eileen said, we need to find Tobias and stop him," said Twilight. "I understand," said Cadence. "Worry not, Twilight, we'll stay and help them out," said Luna. "Are you sure?" she asked. "We may not have our magic back, but we can still be useful in other ways," said Celestia. "Thank you, Celestia and Luna," said Cadence. "I guess if it's okay with you two we won't have to worry about anything else," said Twilight. "Do be careful, alright?" asked Cadence. "Don't worry, as long as Godzilla's on our side, I'm sure we'll be fine," said Starlight. "Alright, we should get going. The longer we waste, the more victims start to pile up," said Eileen. Everyone nodded as they prepared for their next course of action. Tobias was still out there and it was only a matter of time before he got what he wanted. They had to hurry, otherwise it would be the end of Equestria. If you guys are enjoying this story, please give it a like, comment your thoughts, give me a follow and share this story with your friends, and I hope you all